Wherever you're watching us from, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. My name is John Allen Namu. This is our continuing coverage of Kenya's August 2022 general election. Here at Africa Uncensored, a special edition of The Big Picture. We've been talking about it all. We've talked about misinformation, disinformation. We've talked about what kinds of things that the youth can expect from this incoming government. And we've also been humored a little bit by comedians who've taken us through 10 years of memes, jokes, and everything in between. But now we're really at the business end of things. The IEBC is currently tallying the Forms 34B, which is what transposes the results from the polling station right up to the constituency level, after which National Returning Officer for the presidential election, Wafula Chebukati, who's also the chairman of the IEBC, will transpose those results into a Form 34C, upon which the result of the presidential election is declared, and we will know who our next president is, the 5th, whoever it is that you think it will be. But we're discussing the scenarios of what comes next after that declaration is made. We've gone through 2 cycles when it doesn't really end when it ends, right? We either go through to the Supreme Court, and there have been various, variations of what happens after that. And in studio to discuss this with me, 2 very, very intelligent ladies working for different organizations that have been looking at this election from different points of view. I'll start with the one who's here, who's never been here before. Linda Bonyo from Lawyers Hub. Salimia watu Linda. Kuna watu nyumbani wanakuangalia.
All my fans, say hi. I'm kidding, but thank you.
Yeah, and returning again for yet another dose of very interesting conversation, Angela Lungati from Ushahidi.
Hi everyone.
Yeah, and up there, of course, keeping an eye on things factual, debunking misinformation, disinformation, malinformation. From our Pigafirimbi desk is Nyakirari Omari. Yeah. And Nyakirari, I think we'll start with you, because the presidential election has attracted a lot of attention, a lot of misinformation, a lot of disinformation, as well as, perhaps even honest mistakes that have been interpreted as something else. Earlier on in the day, Reuters results portal seemed to have posted wrong results. They've had to come out and issue an apology. But there's a lot that's going around now about the result specifically. Let us know what's happening.
So there's one video that has been really outstanding on social media. Yeah. It's about Chebukati declaring Ruto as the president. So there's a part he says, we could listen in. There's a part he says, and hereby I declare Ruto as the president of Kenya. Okay. Let's listen in.
Want to try and play that one again?
Let me say,
there we are.
William Samuel Ruto as president-elect.
Wow.
As president-elect of Kenya.
How do they do that? And it looks so smooth.
That looks very smooth. Yeah. But when you look closely, the lip sync and the audio, at some point, it doesn't match. But again, that is not evidence enough, according to how we work on Pigafirimbi. So when we ran a reverse image search on this video, it led us to this video from 2017. Yeah. At minute 6 and 4 seconds. And again, also, since he's still the chairman, there are things we look out for. The people in the background.
Yes, I see Connie Minor in the back there.
In the background. Yeah. But at minute 6 and 4 seconds, he declares Uhuru Kenyatta and Ruto. So the part of Uhuru and deputy was edited out to only include Ruto and president-elect. Yeah. So that was merged, but the lip sync and the audio was not, it
wasn't matching.
Yeah. So, after that, it was uploaded online. Yeah. But a reverse image search really leads us to 2017 by Citizen. And also one outstanding thing that we used to check this video is the positioning of the camera. by citizen.
Yeah.
So the entire time it was either a wide shot or this. So we used this camera from YouTube.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know, what I've noticed over the past maybe about 12 hours is that even the kind of information, the kind of misinformation and disinformation that's coming out now over the past 12 hours has less to do, of course, with voting, because we've kind of moved away from that stage to the result itself. Earlier, Tracy was here showing us a Form 34A from a constituency. Was it in Untitled Chapter or in Tana River?
Yeah,
with the results that were flipped. That one was an interesting one because it's a genuine Form 34A downloaded from the IBC portal. But what people are using it to imply is where, you know, the rubber meets the road. So please just keep looking for a couple of those. I'll come back to you in a bit, Nyakirario. But that's a great place to start, Linda. You know, Linda, you've worked in the digital space, albeit, you know, from perhaps a legal perspective. And there was a question that was being asked by our last panel. I'd like to ask it to you. Where someone, for instance, posts a genuine image, like what we were talking about was the infographic from IBC's results transmission system, which has then now been used as a source of misinformation, talking about the back room, etc., as you know, as an indication or an implication that someone's trying to rig. What happens with people like that? Like, is there any legal recourse for that kind of activity online? Because there's a lot of it right now.
Okay. I think maybe I'll give two scenarios and maybe two different answers. The first is initially when I started doing the kind of work I do on digital policy, I naively thought that the Kenyan law does not envisage such occurrences. And so you'd think that that's not actually an offense because it's done online, and therefore the law sort of envisages things that are offline, which is not true because the penal code already provides for that as an offense. And the duty to verify information is on the individual. If you're posting, like, it's coming from this government website, whatever it is, but then you need to verify that particular information if you're going to publish it, you know. So that's the first one. I think maybe I could just find the, and this will take maybe 30 seconds to find the specific law. So I think section 66 talks about alarming publications, subsection 1. It says any person who publishes any false statement, rumor or report which is likely to cause fear and alarm to the public or to disturb the public peace is guilty of a misdemeanor. It shall be a defense to a charge under subsection 1 if the accused person proves that prior to the publication he took such measures to verify the accuracy of the statement, rumor or report as to lead him to reasonably to believe that it was true. So sometimes we want to republish, so you want to retweet or you want to reshare, but it's upon you to verify that this is actually that information. And so going in and saying, no, it was even posted on this other platform, really, that's stretching it. And so sometimes...
so it's not a defense to say,
it's not a defense.
I saw it on this platform, I think it's a credible
so I actually reshared it. So it's good to simply just verify. If you don't have the capacity to verify, you should just wait it out. Because there are fact checkers, there are other platforms that will do this, but I feel like we are really we want to be the first to always share the news within our networks, family groups, you know. We'll have the aunties and even young people who keep sharing the forwards, and like 3 of you all land with the same video at the same time on that WhatsApp group, you know. But we want to be the first to break news. I think that should not be the case. We need to think about the legal ramifications of this. But then the flip side also is just how we use data for research, which is also something different, because you're trying to, you know, get this information on this portal and get it to be something that people can ideally digest, because like facts and figures are a lot. So one of the things, maybe I'll digress a bit into the Data Protection Act.
No, digress away. This is interesting. Okay.
But one of the things that the research community was really advocating for was the fact that the law should allow us to play with data. So then that you're able to research, you're able to get these opinions without being punished for those academic positions, you know. And so this for me in terms of law reform is to really look at the fact that somebody was using this data from IBC. It was not verified yet, but then they're actually looking at it in terms of research and sharing out with the public in that sense.
Yeah.
But I think those are some of the things that we can pursue post the election on, especially on law reform.
Interesting, because there's bound to be a lot more misinformation, disinformation. Say if there's a Supreme Court, you know, case, a petition coming out of this election, right? So, Angela, just say similar related question. Your situation room as Ushahidi, you've been really putting your ear to the ground. Where?
Yeah, I like the sign.
Yes. Tell us more about what's been going on.
I mean, it's been fairly busy. Like I said a couple of days ago, we've had the situation room has been live since the 1st of August. Just been trying to monitor and see, okay, what information is coming in. And it's been interesting to note that on election day, things chilled because now people are focusing on what exactly is going on. Let me share a stat. So we checked on verification status of data. This was on the day after election at 3 p.m. And we had false reports at around 3% of the data that we collected. Come to yesterday, by the end of the day, false reports had risen to 36.95%.
Wow, more than a third of all the information that's out there.
At some point, that's like incredible. The misinformation machine is on steroids right now.
It's real, and I think we're all playing a part. Again, just to refer to some of the guests who I had here, everybody has fallen, you know, victim to you know, false news, fake news, misinformation, including Martha Karua as an example, who congratulated Wangui Girishi for her win, which had been declared by Twitter presiding officers only for you know, Anne Waiguru to be declared the winner later on. I
have a different view though, and my view is that there's so much we don't know right now, and you'd be surprised that maybe somebody was a winner, but then things changed. And so I'm giving the other side the benefit of doubt and waiting for the petitions, which it sounds, you know, the lawyers are waiting for petitions to really get the work, and I'm happy for them. But I think petitions really reveal a lot to us, you know, the curious bystanders. Like, it really just tells you, you'd be surprised that people actually had voted, the tallies had been done, and then somebody showed up with an empty ballot box or whatever and said this has not been tallied, or they ordered a recount, because that's what politicians do. They say no, recount, and in the midst of that recount, which is their right according to the law, a box is sneaked in, and then that box makes all the difference. And so I would say this, that we may have those instances, and we've had it, I think, previously in the petitions that came in. And it just takes time for us to actually know what actually changed, you know, because people have realized that the polling station, according to the processes we've gone through with the cases in court, the Maina Kei case, for instance, that the polling station is the final place. Unlike 2017, where there's a lot of stuff that happened at the National Tallying Center at IBC. And so what people are doing is, can we change things at the polling station before they generate that 34A? And if they have generated it, how do we ensure that either it's pulled off the system and replaced with something else? And so knowing Kenyans and the level of corruption that we have had, and you know, out there people know us, like, you introduce yourself, they're like, you're Kenyan, you know. So I would not be surprised by the creativity that will be going on around this election, because it's all transparent. Someone will tell you, yeah, we've opened our data, but you don't know what they're hiding, you know. And just in response to what you said, we assume that misinformation has to come from individuals. It can also come from government organizations, you know, and sometimes it takes a bit of time for us to get that.
That's so interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but I was going to say, I mean, like, I understand that perspective, but then when you also think about the history that we have had, and everybody understanding the responsibility you carry, and the impact that the information you're sharing could have. Because even in this case, fine, yes, according to the tallies from different political parties, this is what you are seeing. But then there's what IBC, which is the one that's mandated to give the official results. So now when you have two different things and it starts to create havoc, because it's like, me, you told me my guy won, suddenly you're saying that he hasn't won.
That's true.
Right? And so it begs the question, maybe we should just really agree to wait for IEBC to publish the results. And let that be a rule generally.
You know, that's interesting, but it's also difficult. It's a very difficult line to walk, especially when the IBC itself has provided all of this information for you to be able to verify. As an example, we're currently tallying the forms 34B that are on the IBC portal. We will get to a conclusion fairly soon, right? And we are within our rights to go and, you know, share what we have found, in as much as it might not be the final result. You know, share what we have found, because there's a vacuum of information around that specific result. It's a difficult decision to make, and I think it's an editorial one at the end of the day, but one that has to take a wider consideration for that specific one. What I think is happening now, specific to the kind of misinformation that the misinformation, disinformation, and to your point, the things that we might find out later is this I want to say management, or perhaps perception that has been created by default that the IEBC are the winners in this election in terms of the credibility with which they have run this election, with the transparency, the openness, etc. They are coming out smelling like a rose, you know, at this point in time, right? But, you know, and there's a big but, there might be things very well that could have happened at the polling station level. You know?
I was just going to add and say there's a long list of observer reports that are out today. From the Commonwealth to Angaza, the network from, I think, HRC and different organizations, including the AU and IGAD that were in the country. And so these reports, so I'm sorry for my pessimism, but a lot of these reports are people come in, go to 20 counties, and, you know, we'll know when you go on trips what we do, take nice pictures. And when you are invited to observe on the invitation of the IBC, you really would follow your host, you know. And so what we've had with observer reports, and this is just not my opinion, was the 2017, the court said that observers simply observed when people came into polling stations, when they left, you know, which sounds like an occurrence book that a guard could do. But what did they do to the system? All these observer reports, there's really little reference even to the misinformation. The local organizations have been cognizant of the fact that there's a lot of misinformation. But two, the international observers are just bent on the fact that, oh my God, it's so transparent. Look, it's on the portal.
And it's not violent.
Yes, and it's not violent. Like, observing for peace you can do online. You can just see, oh, there's no fighting, it's okay. But then observing this system and beginning to question. And one of the things, I met some of the observer groups, they asked to meet with us, and one of the things I told them is, what toolkit are you using to actually observe elections?
Interesting.
What are the questions that you're asking? And if simply you're looking at the number of women who voted or children, or you're looking at violence, there will always be security officers when the polling stations open. There will always be a provision for people who maybe have children, they will come in.
For the disabled,
that's not
etc.
news mostly. But what we're looking for is, do you understand what logs ideally are on KIMSKit, you know? And my view was that a lot of the resourcing that was around this election should not go into, which maybe, like, I don't agree with this now myself, because I've changed my mind a bit about, there was too much resourcing on, focus on misinformation. But there was no focus and resourcing on, we want to fund you to be able to address the KIMSKit issue. Can you audit KIMSKit before it begins? Can the log say 00? Can you audit every single constituency that before the returning officer sends, takes a picture of Form 34A and transmits it to the constituency level, that we can confirm they have internet. That is not saying loading forever. That if they leave the station, because there was a provision that if there's no internet, let's say in Pokot, and it's a polling station, that you're allowed to go to the constituency tallying center and then send it from there, you know. So are we actually resourcing people to do things like that, that will ensure that the KIMSKit, the Form 34A that leaves Pokot is the one that arrives at Bomas. And the person who receives it at Bomas ideally translates it to Form 34B, and it's accurate in that sense. I think that we failed again, because in 2017 that was not done, and in this year that has not been done. We don't have as in-depth reporting. as they should be. And so a lot of this observer group said, I'm pessimistic. And I told them the problem with the election will come into the transmission and the tallying.
Yeah.
Because there are many polling stations. So you can be declared a winner in this polling station, but at the constituency level, that's when you all come and collate all of them together. Then you realize maybe there existed even polling stations you didn't know. Because if you went to your polling station and you're told, vote here, while you vote there, you're simply told, you're in polling station 3, you go in. You think there are just 10 polling stations there, and maybe there are several.
There's another one that is specifically directing people to create this. You know. And in an election with low turnout, it's quite easy to be able to pad numbers. In the scenario that you had spoken about earlier, at the point of a recount, or some point where there's a breakage in the link between the declaration of the result and the transmission of the result. That's interesting. It's also something that the Azimio formation is asking about right now. This is what I was trying to remember when we were offset. They're asking about the Keems kits specifically, what the chain of custody was with the Keems kit, who accessed it, what kind of logs can we show to be able to establish that the Form 34 that was uploaded at this point in time was not taken down or replaced at any point in time, simply because the election result at the polling station is final. Really interesting.
And 6% of them failed, according to the E-Log Observer report. 6% is huge.
That's a big percent. I mean, we're at a 0.05, a difference between the two candidates, and that's all the difference between a runoff and a 50+1 declaration of the presidency. That's massive. I want us to push on a little bit to now the actual scenarios about what could happen. Right? There was a scenario paper that was doing the rounds maybe a week or two before the election in terms of the different things that could happen. I want you, Linda, to start by speaking to some of the legal scenarios, right? So Party A's candidate wins the election. Party B goes and challenges it, even before we get to court, right? Even before the declaration is made. What options exist for a candidate who's seeing that, look, this election is not going the way I thought it would based on my own tally? What can they do at that point in time, at least for the presidential election? Yeah.
So I think for the presidential, what is happening mostly at Bomas is to have whatever has been tallied to come to generate Form 34Bs. And maybe for everyone who's like, they're just 3 forms. I like when a lecturer begins, I just have 3 points. I'm like, thank God. So the Form 34A is generated from the polling station. The polling station. And then it's sent directly to Chebukati. Then using the Form 34A, they then generate a Form 34B. That now indicates this is the person who's won, blah, blah, blah. And then Form 34B is then used by Chebukati to generate Form 34C, which is now the final declaration. And so they're trying to get us now from Form 34B to Form 34C. So whatever has been confirmed, they would say, we've confirmed this is the Form 34B. So from what I understand, all the media houses are now using Form 34B that's been generated to now issue a final tally. So that's one. So there's you can't appeal what hasn't happened. So in most election scenarios, you can order a recount at the polling station. But there's something that really happened, I think, that has not, and I think people need to interview Maina Kiai a bit more, because their petition was really instrumental in 2017 to drive us towards the openness and transparency around this election. And so one of the issues they came up with was on the timelines, and just farming up on where do we declare the final results. So if it was declared at the polling station, that's the final sort of result. And then the thing about electoral laws in Kenya, and my view is very balanced, one has a law reform side, but then also constitutional side. We don't have, our election laws has not really developed, because what politicians do is when they get into office, they start looking at legislation that really benefit them. And so election processes are usually skewed by party politics. What does the party want? You think that you're in the opposition, so the law needs to look like this. And then they're very last minute. And so the greatest achievement we've had around election laws is actually in the judicial space, because the judiciary drove us to the next level in 2017.
Yeah.
And then also now drove us to the next level in terms of clarifying on the use of the manual register and use of the KIMS kit. And so that out of the way, we now look at these scenarios that you can't appeal something that has not been declared. For example, if Parliament is, let's say, discussing a particular bill and it's going to affect, let's say, digital tax, you can go to court. The court has established this and appeal that Parliament is discussing this. They have to come out with a product, and then you appeal against that product. You see, and so with the electoral processes as well, that unless there's a winner declared, that's when you come in and stop the process and say, no, I want to dispute the winner. And so with the presidential petition, I would break it down. Someone asked me last night, what are the timelines? What do we do? And I think one of the issues people are grappling with is timeline. You want to know what happens. What do I do? Like, when can I travel? When can I go back to school? When can I go back to work? And so the first thing is we voted on a Tuesday. We have 7 days officially to get results. Whether that's a long enough period or it's short, it depends on where you sit. And also in the future, what we want changed. 7 days is a long time. It's good for verification, but then also we see what it's doing to the country. In terms of misinformation, there's an information gap. People simply just want to move on. And so let's get it to next week, Tuesday. Next week, Tuesday, let's say by Tuesday, the winner has been announced. Whoever loses has the opportunity within 7 days to file a petition at the Supreme Court. And they just have one chance. Initially, we had Court of Appeal. You could appeal all these presidential petitions. But then the new constitution established it as a Supreme Court duty. You appeal once. So within those 7 days, they will put together their paperwork. From what I'm told, both political sides are already preparing. They prepared even before the election. So they put in their teams, and their teams are not talking to anyone. Both of, like, if you call them, they're just like, hey, we are not talking, which is interesting and good. So they have 7 days to put together a petition. After the 7th day, if there's nobody who comes in and disputes, then after 7 days we can ideally tutapisha, you see. But if this person goes to court, we have another 14 days. So within 14 days, the court will hear. They'll do the pre-trials, and then they do the hearing and make a determination within 14 days. 14 days is really short to hear a presidential petition, but the drafters of the constitution felt like people needed to move on. And when you look at the Willy Mutunga Supreme Court, what he did was they didn't give a very full judgment in the beginning. They simply just gave a verdict and then said we will be able to supply the full judgment later, just because of the timelines. And so from the day you vote to the day that all this, people would say nightmare goes away, it feels like 21 days. Actually 28 days, as you sort of calculate. So that Tuesday, give it 7 days for results, give it another 7 days for somebody to come in and dispute, and then that person who disputes has another 2 weeks to hear and make a determination. It feels like close to a month since the day we voted. And let's say we order a runoff. So if there's no winner, we have 30 days for a runoff. And it's only the 2 leading contenders. So
60.
30
days. So wait, this is
I should actually read the constitution.
Once Chebukati declares that there's no winner, say if he decides on Tuesday, 30 days from Tuesday, that's when the runoff will take place. Okay.
Also, you have to pray for your favorite candidate who's won. If they die, fresh elections in 60 days. So whoever is poised to be the president-elect should not die. At least they should wait until they're in office. Because then, if they wait at least 2 years before they die...
Such a macabre way of looking at For the sake of time.
Just
let me actually read it. As Section 139 of the Constitution says, death before assuming office. If a president-elect dies after being declared elected as president, but before assuming office, the deputy president-elect shall be sworn in as the acting president on the date on which the president-elect would otherwise have been sworn in, and a fresh election to the office of the president shall be held within 60 days after the death of the president-elect.
Wow.
And this is different. If the were in office for more than 2.5 years, then the deputy just takes over the rest of the term. So
more than 2.5 years.
Yeah. But
because
before then,
because it's assumed.
election.
Yeah, because it's assumed that if I become president on day one, I trip and fall, and die, then my deputy takes over for the full ride.
No.
Okay, so it's 2.5.
2.5.
Been in office for 2.5 years.
Yeah. So that's the difference. The other option would be, if the election is cancelled, there's a runoff, one candidate dies, then you have 60 days to do a fresh election. The difference between a runoff and a fresh election, one is that a runoff has whoever, the top two, but a fresh election is anybody now, Ruben Kigame, who didn't make it, all these other candidates who really want to still go for election would still come in and you do the fresh elections.
Okay.
So it's a long process. They thought of all these scenarios in which how do we then get the nation stable enough, and I think it's worked, because there would have been so many uncertainties at this point on where we need to go, and then people will just be electing a president and killing them. The deputy will just be, let me take you out because now we won. I'm going to be the guy.
Interesting. Angela, I want to bring you in with regard to some of the things that perhaps Ushahidi is going to be looking out for from now, the day of the declaration of the result. What are the things that you're looking for in terms of the information environment, in terms of the perceptions that people perhaps might have, and how that translates into actual, physical action or what have you? Yeah.
So keep in mind that the main reason why we set up Uchaguzi, which is now the customized version of our Ushahidi platform, is rapid response, right? So pre-election period, it's your monitoring to see, is there misinformation, is there any threats to incitement to violence or any sort of irregularity, so that can be forwarded over. Election dates, is the election going smoothly? Post-election, the thing that we're largely looking for, again, is still misinformation, incitement to violence, and security issues. So even now, the things that we're watching out for are very different from what we're looking at before. We know that, we know how misinformation influences people's activity, so that's still a very key one. Security issues is probably the top one, because when you think about the very first election instance that was set for Shahidi, it was that, just documenting any instances of violence, human rights violations, so that we can forward that over to people who can respond to it. So those are the main things that we're looking out for right now, so that we can quell any issues that pop up.
Okay. Interesting that you mentioned security as a major concern. Of course, it's a concern for lots of people across the country. And Elijah Kanyi as well as Raquel Mwegai were in the field looking for people who we had interviewed 5 years ago, would you believe, from the outcome of the 2017 election. It was a pretty violent election, one that had serious casualties for lots of people, and they were able to track down one lady, I think, and another gentleman who had suffered in various instances of violence, and here's what they had to say. Sorry? Okay, we can't hear inside here. Can it be played through the... Yeah, I'm saying... Sorry? Say again? Okay. All right, I'm being told that the clip is not ready. Okay, so we'll keep the clip for a second, and when it's ready, then I think we can play it again. But one of the things that we've heard from people on the ground, of course, is this election fatigue, right? And election fatigue means different things to different people. So if you're a person who's running an SME and you just got out of COVID, you're just getting back onto your feet, and then an election comes and here you are again having to sort of put the brakes on your business. Fatigue means one thing. And on the back of that, I want to ask you, Linda, for the person who is waiting to start their business again, and the runoff is declared. So with that, that's 30 days or 28 thereabouts, 27, 28 thereabouts of campaigning again. And then the runoff
and then waiting for results.
And then
so you do the other 30 again.
Yes. Tell me, what happens if a winner is declared and the other party is dissatisfied after a runoff?
They would go to court again for petition. And if you remember the last election, 2017, what happened was that the elections were nullified.
Yes.
And then we went back to vote. And then we went back to court again. And the court said, this is satisfactory, swearing the president. So people can go as many times they want to court. There's one step you skipped on an SME, you just started COVID, and you skipped the process where KRA wants us to have new ETR machines. And then before you can afford the new ETR machine, when there's election,
the election comes.
You actually don't even have clients then.
For those new ETR machines.
Yes. It's so annoying. If you're for KRA, please give us time.
Take notes.
Let me use this opportunity to say this. Law reform, when you're changing a law, a mature country gives people time. Like Europe introduced the GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulations. They gave them 2 years to comply. Because there are ramifications. Maybe sometimes you need to, hire a new person, you need to change premises, whatever it is. We need to wrap up and say, you know what, this is not a good environment, I'm going to declare bankruptcy. And this also from the new members of parliament. You just can't wake up and change a particular law like that. Like, give people time, even when you're putting in the date of commencement. It needs to come in maybe after 6 months, after 1 year, so people can prepare for it. This whole thing about looking at law reformers from a criminal perspective, like you must do this, you must do that. No, these are businesses that must be helped to, grow in their own country.
Even if it's not growing, get back onto their feet. There needs to be some sort of structural support from the government to be able to support, to be able to ensure that people are able to derive livelihoods from what it is that they want to do.
That's true. That's true. And so even during this time, like, on election day was actually, sorry, I run businesses, so I know on election day was the final day for paying PAYE. We got an annoying message.
It was 9th.
Oh yes, it was a 9th.
We got an annoying message and reminder. And I pay tax. I believe in paying tax. And we got this reminder from the Kenya Revenue Authority on, you must pay your tax. I was like, the hell? I'm just voting. What's wrong with you? So I think there's just need for sometimes to be very empathetic about these things and know that when you actually give people the opportunity to grow their businesses, even in the light of these uncertainties, that they will come back and pay, they would hire more people, they would do stuff. But that said, I think I would balance this off and say, one, we learned a lot from COVID in terms of working remotely. That I think it's a great opportunity for people to make use of the remote spaces to sell, to do these things. Also, too, I'm a proponent for scaling beyond one country. Because I feel like the more you focus on Kenya, when Kenya is down, you're down. And this just begins from small things, like if you're selling shoes, can you sell it on Instagram, like set up some other space in Uganda, for instance? Can we begin to look for these spaces, like the way, I can't remember the name of this place in Tao where people pick their stuff. If you order online, you can pick your stuff from that building. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a famous place where, you know what I was going to say? I was going to say tea room. But tea room? You go to the mall, there's a place where you buy things. You're like, no, pick it in Tao. So so we need to have that sort of thinking, and at the Lawyers Hub, we're actively working on the Africa Free Trade Agreement, especially on the digital trade aspect. And we're consulting for a different organization. And so one of our learnings is that people who scale beyond their country actually have options. That if something happens here, you'd find that maybe now South Africa was done with election, or another country is done with election. They're on this path to growth that can be able to offer that. So I don't have any other advice, because I'm a business person. So that's what I'd say.
All right, sorry. Before we continue with the conversation, I think we have... Vinny, do you have that clip ready now? All right, so we can play that clip. Like I mentioned, it's from one of the people we interviewed a few years ago.
Okay.
We can't hear it in the talkback. Vinny, studio sound?
Naitwa Janet Ongaya. Mimi ni mkazi wa hapa Kawangware, hapa ni Kongo. The situation now naona si mbaya, like comparing the last one ambapo kulikuwa na tension, but sasa hakuna tension. Like now watu wana focus, unapata ukiuliza watu wanakuambia most of the time wamekuwa wakipigana, sijui fanya nini, at the end hao ndio wana lose. Then ukiangalia pia wanaangalia pia the year 2020 venye kumekuwa, life has been so hard, so imebidi watu wakae chini watulie waone. Wanasema in any case ule anachukua kiti so long as we just have peace.
Last time kulikuwa kubaya, tungeweza taka kwa barabara saa hii. Sasa hivi tunaona kuna amani kwa sababu sasa hata mimi sasa naona niko kwa barabara, watu wamefungua biashara ndogo. Polisi wanaendelea na business zao. Hata kama kuna wale hawajafungua sio wengi, ni wale tu kidogo wenye wanaogopa. Lakini mimi sijaona kama kuna kitu mbaya yenye inaweza fanyika.
2017 ilikuwa vibaya. Because kama sasa tungekuwa tunafanya kazi, tungekuwa shajifungia kitambo. Na sasa hii ndio tunajaribu kutega, lakini hakuna. Hali iko shwari, hatujui venye watasema ni nani ameshinda, hatujui kenye kitatokezea. Kufanya tukitegea majibu kwanza. Hiyo siku ilikuwa unatokezea kidogo na unarudi kwa nyumba. Because ukitokea sana unaweza pigwa ama uvamiwe. Mimi naomba ikuwe sawa na wananchi wazidi kutulia vile wametulia hivyo.
Kwa majina naitwa Mburu Jenga na mimi ni mkazi wa hapa Kongo. Tukilinganisha mwaka wa 2017 na huu wa 2022 iko tofauti sana. Maana 2017 tuliweza kuchomekewa hapa after election ya next. Ile ilirudiwa ya marudio ya presidential tukachomekewa na tuliweza kila kitu yote iliweza kuisha na watu walitusaidia kama Kameme na pia president mwenyewe aliweza kutuma watu hapa na wakatushirikia. Lakini after that tulifurahi kwa vile tena ilikuwa ile mkono ya handshake, na hata sasa kulingana na vile watu nasikia huku wanasema yule atachukua, sisi hatuna mambo ya vita au kusochana huku ground iko hivyo, unless kitu itokee. Tungetaka siasa ikuage namna hii, at least Kenya tujue kuna mtu namba moja na namba mbili, kutoka biti ya juu mpaka ya chini.
You want to catch those and more stories, you can go to our YouTube page on Africa Uncensored, where we're streaming this live. Don't forget to follow and subscribe. We've also got lots of updates on our Twitter pages as well as TikTok. We're all over the place, really, all over the shop. While we were on break, Nyakerario, you said you had a question for Linda?
Yes, I had a question for Linda.
Okay.
So now I understand that ushahidi, one of the things that they look out for is hate speech. So legally, let me start from the beginning.
Okay.
On Piga Firimbi, there's a tool we have that is called archive.is.
Okay.
So it's a tool that we use to archive posts online. So just in case the publisher deletes it, we have it.
Okay.
Yeah, so if they delete it, we have even the comments and all that.
Okay.
So legally, if someone has posted a post that is that tends to incite people to violence and all that, but they delete it, but as journalists, as investigative journalists, we still have it. Can we present it in court as evidence? Does that work?
Yes, it works. But let me first answer as a lawyer. It depends. So the onus of the role of who actually proves a criminal case, it's the state. Yeah. So if let's say it was hate speech, whatever it was, unless you're talking about defamation, for example, that will be on you as an individual, and you're suing Linda and saying, this is what you've done to my persona online and stuff. But let's say hate speech, that would ideally come from the state, and unless you do a private prosecution through still the office of the ODPP. So one of the things that we try to do at the Lawyers Hub is to train people on digital forensics, on how to preserve this evidence and then also how to present it before court. Our Evidence Act already provides for the submission of such evidence. The procedure is a bit more different, and now judicial officers are now beginning to question digital evidence, especially because of deepfakes and how people are using algorithms, for instance, to distort such information. But I would say yes, it's possible to present this particular evidence in court. One of the really important cases that have been defined this year is for the Willy Kimani case, on ideally how to preserve digital evidence and present it before court. So that's the short form of the answer. Okay. So I would say yes. Yeah.
Are you archiving, just as a rider to her question, are you archiving those kinds of instances?
So it's interesting because we haven't had any cases where something has gotten deleted, and then because it depends on which data source the information is coming from. I think in cases where somebody deletes a tweet, we might have a record of the report itself, but won't be able to access the particular link. But even then, we still forward it over to our partners. Like in this case, we've been forwarding any cases of misinformation to the Fumbua team. And then they are able to then figure out what to do with it. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just add on, like, China has perfected the whole art of presenting digital evidence in court, and they actually now are using blockchain to actually present digital evidence and having you, for instance, if let's say you've taken a picture and you want to preserve it, you'll upload it on a particular site, and then they will be able to give you some specific keys. And then now they're working with law enforcement officers to be able to actually confirm on that specific day and whatever it is. And so when you need it in court, then they're able to provide that, which is like next level stuff many countries are not doing.
Okay. Yeah. Nyakarari, do you have anything that we're looking at in terms of our fact checks at this point in time, or we still have you there, that we can teach our audiences about at this point in time?
Yes, there's a video that has been circulating from Bomet.
This relates to something very interesting. I mean, in terms of the scenarios that we should expect, right? So based on past elections, of course, there's fears of either very robust celebrations or very aggravated reactions to the result. And this is one of those instances where video seems to have captured one or two of those things.
Yes, so these are claims that this is a protest in Bomet. So it surfaced the internet yesterday.
Yeah, I think I've seen it doing rounds.
Yeah. What have you been able to find out about this?
So there are a few things we've noted with this video. As much as it is being used under Bomet, it has been used under Kisumu, Kayole, yes, Kayole, Narok as well. So the fact that this video is being misused, it means that the claims around it are false. So there's no specific claim that is true. That is why they're trying to throw around claims attached to it.
Yeah.
But if you look at it well, if you can just see well, it looks like it's an Islam celebration, or this video was taken in an Islam-dominated area. So when you look at Kayole or Kisumu or Bomet, it doesn't place much. Yeah, because we've not really placed exactly where this happened. Okay. But those small details lead us to, a bigger part that this video is false and it's being misused online.
No, and it's good that you've pointed this particular one out, because if the result is declared tonight, I can almost guarantee that this same video is going to do the rounds with claims, you know, awash with the internet, awash with claims about it, and it's good that people are able to identify, like those young girls who are marching forward. Of course, eventually, when we finish our fact check on this, even the buildings themselves, etc., and those kinds of landmarks will become important for us to be able to verify going forward. Still on scenario planning, Angela, again, we don't know what the reactions to this election will be. We hope that if there are any at all, they'd be positive based on you know, if it was a credible election, right? But the likelihood is that there will be some sort of challenge, and a vigorous one at that. What should we be looking for from the point of view of preparing ourselves for the coming information war that will be played online and elsewhere about Party A versus Party B, Party B's evidence, look here, look that? How do we prepare ourselves as citizens who just want to follow what is happening without falling into various, you know, misinformation traps?
That's a good question. I think there are a lot of resources online right now trying to help people figure out, okay, what are the steps that I take to verify as, you know, a particular message that has come in. I think that's one thing. Arm yourselves with information on how to figure out what is true and what's not true. Second thing, exercise restraint before you share things. Make sure that you're only sharing something that you can actually verify is real, because otherwise what we'll be doing is just creating more and more panic. So I would say that arm yourself with information, and there's people like Africa Check, even Fumbua, that have, you know, various steps that you can take to verify information. Do that, and to just exercise restraint. Don't share things around unless you know it's actually true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Linda, same question to you, but again, just going back into some of the legal scenarios, right? So we'd spoken about petition, and of course there could be two outcomes: that the election victory is upheld, at which point we move on, and the person is elected.
If the victory is upheld? If the victory is upheld
in a Supreme Court petition?
Yes.
Okay. So then if not, what possible options are there? Can the Supreme Court order a recount, you know, a fresh election, that portions of that election be reviewed? What kind of options exist? Or what possible rulings?
Yeah, I think it's just the two, because then, you know, I think from the last election we had this sort of reviews and retallying initially within the Supreme Court. And, you know, at that point, one of the asks was, you know, open the server, you know, whatever it was. And so the Supreme Court now sits at the point where they're the court of first instance, but then they're also the court of appeal. And so there's nobody who's going to review their decision. And so they have to decide with finality. And that's why we've had just two instances: declare and uphold the victory, or nullify the election, which not many people thought that would be possible, you know, in that sense. And again, this law is written by people like us, and I think for me that's what I think many people should focus on how do we actually make this better? Yeah. Does it serve us that there's just 7 people? You know, like if you see the narrative that was being pushed in the US, that, you know, these people don't vote, but they eventually decide the will of how many million Americans. And so do we have a problem with that? That eventually this thing, however much you voted or stayed in line, it can all end up being decided by 7 people, you know? So we have to decide as a country if we want that. I find that the reform processes on, you know, it's just, even this particular term, we had the BBI process. Every sort of election, in the middle, politicians have to show us they are relevant. And so they have to push the narrative that we must have a constitutional review process. But I think we over-focus on things that don't exist, especially on parties and power, but are not necessarily looking at, can we fix these specific aspects? So one of the things that I would even say long-term is to really review the role of the Supreme Court and see, does this actually work in the process? Something that we see is also, elections are just, all of them at the same time. I think that we should just have strictly presidential elections. One, it will help us to make good decisions, because you're clear that there are 5 people I am looking for one boyfriend. You have a choice.
Or girlfriend.
But here you're hiring a house help, you're looking for a boyfriend, you had a new baby. Wow. So that's what elections feel, because you have 6, like they gave me my 6 papers when I was voting. One was so long. I'm just like, what? And then you get there, you realize, oh my God, I didn't even ask who was vying for MCA.
For MCA,
because we don't have enough time to actually verify these people. And so I think the next step will be, as Kenyans, can we just decide that these are our priorities in terms of, and especially Gen Z, people who thought that I should not even vote. I think they should not give up at this point, that there has to be a citizen-led effort towards making this election process better for us. And if we're doing midterms, because politicians want to do elections every 2.5 years, they want to have a constitutional drive, can we then have, let's say, MCAs as midterms, and then have presidential elections, so that we actually we focus, is it state? And the more we have these elections, people will get tired of going to the village to vote. They'll just say,
let me vote in my
area.
Let
me vote where I live. Because the mistake is we're all going back to shags, and you're voting for people you will never need. You don't know the problems people in shags have, And so I think that the focus now should be on what are the learnings? What can we change? What can we amend? And let it not be a political approach that we're focusing on politicians. Let's focus on what the citizens actually want in that sense.
Great jump off point. Linda, I keep calling you. Angela.
It's easy. Capture your attention.
Yes. but you have something important to say, and I wanted to ask you something as well, but please go ahead.
It's just, as you're speaking, the thought that came to mind is, can we afford to have elections in a shorter cycle than 5 years? When you think about the havoc it creates, because literally everything comes to a standstill. Right now we're being told kids are supposed to go back to school on Monday. It's Friday, results haven't been announced.
We don't know.
Right?
I think we can. It's just that the presidential is the price. Like, it's a winner takes it all. And it doesn't even matter who you vote for MP. Like, I know the constitution says the parliament is the other arm, they will put in check. But the truth is not true. The president decides what they want to do with this country.
But Linda, I mean, to be fair, if you want to drive us towards a system where the legislature, actually does the work that it does, then there has to be some sort of importance that's placed on that election. And it's not to disagree with you. I actually hold the same view that we should stagger our elections across a very, a specific space and time. Not just for us to release that pressure valve, but also in terms of the administrative functions of government and continuity. It feels like we're disrupted, And the thing about this one-day election, for me, like my observation is that everything stops, especially because we've had this winner-takes-it-all system. We politic from the day the person is elected, and the political cycle just grows bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and more intense.
Which we need to kill.
We need to be able to, if not kill, but just mitigate it so that it focuses on the politics of the day, because there will be politics around different issues. There will be politics around changing the elections, the education system, as an example. If we were more focused on things like that over the term of a presidency, or over the legislative term, then perhaps we might get further, right? But the kind of pressure cooker situation that we're in at this point in time makes it so dangerous. And I guess, in a sense, that's something that's interestingly missing from this election, and Kenyans are like, "Hey, mtu hajatupatia gas." It sounds weird and funny, but if you think about it seriously, that's the point. You want to have a sober mind when you're going into an election, so that it's not swayed. And these are some of the things that might be thinking about. Angela, I'd wanted to ask you about we've come from a very difficult. I don't say difficult election, but more a difficult period from 2017 going forward. I know this is not related to the election per se, but what is Ushahidi thinking about in terms of rapid response around issues of food security? The subsidies on unga are ending next week, like literally after the election.
Of course.
The subsidies on fuel are going to be scrapped by November, right? We are heading into a period, a very, very difficult period when it comes to the economy. and the kitchen economy specifically. Are you thinking about tracking sentiment at that point in time and what that might do in terms of perhaps civil unrest going forward? Because to me, and I've said this to many people, or anybody who cares to listen, for me the election is the battle within the wider war. The wider coming war is the war on our economy, and who's going to be able to resist, So what are your thoughts on that?
That's a difficult question, because it's when you think about the role that we play as Ushahidi, we look at ourselves as the tech company that creates the tools that empowers other people to now start collecting the data and figuring out how to sort out the problems that are going on, because we're a very small team. Kid you not, we are 13 people spread out. Half of us are here in Kenya, then we have a couple of people, somebody in Hungary, in Nigeria, in Uganda, and then in the US. And we are trying to serve people who use our platform across 160 countries. This election is the only instance where we literally down our tools on everything else, and not only make sure that we've set up the platform, but that we're training up volunteers, setting up the workflows, and mobilizing people to manage the data. And it takes quite a lot. But that doesn't mean that we don't think about all the other issues surrounding this particular instance. The only challenge is that we need to work with partners. Because our expertise is on the technology itself, how it facilitates rapid, rather massive data collection, and how you can then manage the data so you can forward it over for response. We can't work alone. We cannot work alone, because at the end of the day as well, it's not just about creating awareness about the issues. It's okay, so this is happening. Who's going to respond to it? How is this data going to influence a certain decision? And we aren't the ones who are going to make that decision. So we need willing partners. We need people who are, the people who are advocating for change. We need policymakers at the table. We need people who are advocating for that change as well. So this for me is like an open call. I mean, we're here. We'd be happy to work with you. Let's set up the platform. Let's figure out how to get, because we've built up a critical mass of people who know about the platform right now and what it can do. Let's talk and figure out how we can help.
That's an interesting point of view, and some reminder of some conversation we had here on this election. Joe Kobuzi, who's one of the curators at the Elephant, his contention is that he's up there, the one in the jacket, the observer jacket. Doesn't quite look like him. That's a caricature, but I guess you know who he is. His contention is that this election has brought to an end the feudal era of Kenyan politics, and we have to be able to build a new society that's based on completely different set of values. And to an extent, you seem to think that the evidence that exists, it points to that. The fact that this election was quote unquote detribalized, with the main candidates having to appeal to a constituency that they don't come from by birth.
True, that's true.
Then B, the flip in terms of the demographic of people who participated in this election, with the 18s to 35s being a minority as opposed to the majority that they were in the past, and the 35s and over being the key participants. And then C, of course, the environment that I had indicated or alluded to, the economic environment in which we are, that a new conversation kind of needs to start. This is I'm not asking you as someone who's working at Ushahidi, but more so as a person who's also observed what's been happening in this country. How then do you start to create these new pathways for the rebuilding of a society, or the reform of a society to fit what our needs, our desires are going forward?
I think it begins with first empowering that ordinary person to actually feel like they can be a part of the solution, right? They're the ones who understand what the issues are. They're the ones who know what they need best. So make sure that we can elevate and get to understand or hear their voices on exactly what's going on. The next thing is making sure that that voice actually leads to change, and that's where the question around trust then steps in. Because the only way you can build trust in that relationship is by making sure that you're closing out the feedback loop. The cycle is closed out. I raised my voice, I said X happened. I sent it over to somebody else and something changed.
And someone did something
and someone did something about it.
Yeah.
And so I think generally what it calls for is recognizing, one, these underrepresented groups, listening to them and being open to hearing them out. Then the second thing is using that information that's being surfaced from there to actually create change.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Linda, same question to you, but related to the judiciary, and that arm of government seems to be burdened, in a sense, with the kinds of petitions that are going to come out of this. 2017 was a record year, in terms of the number of petitions. 2022, we're seeing a few more concessions than ordinary. Hopefully, that releases the pressure valve on the judiciary. But how can the judiciary help to raise the bar of trust that a society has, even in its institutions, now coming out of an election?
I think my first comment would be on, I think the progress made from 2017, and also with BBI. People feel that there's a general trust in the judiciary to make the right decision. Which is good. For that perception, I think is great. Two, I would say that we still have a long way to go. If you look at, we must brand our elections as a tech election. I think for a long time we haven't accepted that because it's really tech heavy, and there's no country in East Africa that people are just throwing this word server, hack around like it's our election.
They're throwing other words around.
Yeah, they're throwing VPN and
VPN shutdown, tear gas, disappearances, nothing.
So it tells you that this is actually technology and we must use it. And we've had a challenge. In 2017, the Lawyers Act did not exist. And we were born especially from the fact that there was a gap. We kept asking ourselves within the legal profession that where are these lawyers who understand technology?
Sorry, I just wanted to hold on to that thought a little bit. Cynthia Gishiri is in Nakuru and is bringing us live pictures from the tallying center, the county tallying center there, where seems to be celebrations where Susan Kihika was declared governor-elect for that county. A really, really good, election there for women, having grabbed about 6 legislative posts, right down from, the governor to the senator to about 3 members of parliament and an MCA. There really is lots more representation now of women in Nakuru County, and a really good sign of a coming of age to an extent of our politics, where people, remove these blinkers that they have about women and leadership as an example, and just look at women as leaders and not women or female leaders, right? I think that for me is a good example. But yeah, I mean, to your point.
I lost my train of thought, but I would say this. I think that's really great to have women in parliament and to have them in different positions. My daughter asked me, why don't we have a female president? And so I was like, okay, she's already thinking about it. And kids ask questions. So there's a day she asked me, you mean you're the boss at the moment? I'm like, I am.
There's no other boss.
Yeah, because I'd lied to them. I told them, shh, keep quiet during my Zoom call. I'll be fired. And she said, you mean you're the boss and you'll be fired on a Zoom call?
By who?
Like, so anyway, I think that's really great. So I think my point was on the whole human capacity. There's when people talk about tech and they look at how to empower people, especially within the judiciary, there's a lot of big tech companies giving iPads, giving laptops, but not necessarily investing in the human capital and saying this is, we'll train judges. There's opportunity to change what the Judicial Training Institute, the course that they're doing, and really to make it a bit more tech heavy. We've been pursuing those partnerships and looking at ways in which we could do that. Around the continent as well, we now have a bit more of associations around judges. And currently we are in discussions with the Internet Governance Forum, which is going to happen in Ethiopia in November, December, to simply just get more judges attending and understanding these issues around regulation of the internet and then making better decisions. And I just want to say, if you read the BBI report, actually not BBI, but the Huduma number case, and you look at 2017 as well, there are two things that both instances the judges said around trying to exempt themselves from the discussion around technology and saying that on the technical aspects of Huduma number and its architecture, we do not want to delve into that discussion. But the truth is the crux of those matters were actually on the architecture. I'm sorry. It was on the architecture and looking at, is data centralized? What's a database? How does it look like? Where's the data stored and things like this? And so, but we get where they're coming from. Because for you to be a judge, you should have been in practice for over 15 years. And for them that are at the apex at the Constitutional Court, they have at the Court of Appeal, they've done this for years.
All right. I think Cynthia Gishiri is ready to go live with us from Nakuru. Cynthia, if you can hear us. Cynthia, can you hear us? Cynthia, have you got us? Cynthia? Cynthia, can you hear us? Cynthia Gishiri, can you hear us? All right, so Cynthia can't hear us at the moment. Hopefully we'll be able to catch up with you as we get closer towards the end of the program. But she's been covering the election for us from Uasin Gishu and now going down to Nakuru again. Very important election there. We're coming now to final thoughts in terms of the kinds of scenarios that we're thinking about going forward. Is there anything that perhaps you're seeing now, either in the information environment or in generally speaking with regard to this election, that we've missed or aren't putting enough focus on?
I mean, it goes back to the point that Linda was making before. It was actually reflecting about it. When you look at the different elections that we've had and what the core issues have been, I actually think that there's a bit of maturity kind of developing. When you compare 2007 going into 2013, it was make sure that election day things are going fine. And then somewhere in between it became, let's think about what's happening before elections that then influences the outcomes. Right? And then thinking about the ruling in 2017 and how there was a lot of flack thrown at IBC for it not being a transparent process. And now transparency being created to some extent that then allows us to think about some of the other issues that we need to be thinking about, which goes back to her point around maybe we shouldn't necessarily be funding putting too much funding in the misinformation space. Start to think about the
actual process.
The actual process itself, right? The systemic issues, the how the Kim's kit, how does the tallying happen, and some of the things that could happen in between. So that for me would actually be the thing. So we seem to be covering some of the issues every year. So let's look at this as a way of learning. This is it's a continuous learning process. Let's hope that in the next election we'll be talking about the Kim's kit. Maybe that should be where the focus should be.
And I like what you said, Angela, because I think we look at governance in isolation and in these silos, but not to mix everything we're doing. So if the new government comes in and says we want to have, every school must have Wi-Fi. Kids are going to code. We don't look at it and say, okay, every school is actually a polling station. And so do we actually have cameras and Wi-Fi in that school to be able to transmit results? And we also have people setting up and saying, this is actually a situation room. So whatever results are being done at the polling station is actually being live streamed to your home. And so you can ideally just look and say, my whatever is Jioruma or it's Chelata. I want to watch the live stream. And so somebody sneaking in a ballot box is not, everybody will see it because every room, every class is actually
exactly,
you know, equipped in that way. And so I think that we need to put all these pieces together and say, can we have a holistic way of looking at these things and say that school is just not an isolation, it's a polling station. Let's prepare for it for the next 5 years.
Right policy, but also policy coherence.
That's true.
That's an interesting way of putting it, because nobody would have thought about the digitization of schools in the way that it could help an election function. We sometimes think that's a really brilliant point, the both of you. We're really coming to the end of our program now. I was hoping that we'd be able to get Cynthia back on for that update that we've been really waiting for. I wanted to hear what Susan Kihika was saying. But I want to go to Nyakerario now for the final fact check of the session. Nyaks, you had a couple of fact checks that you had lined up for us, some from last night.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's one final one, but as I fish it out, I'll throw a question in the room for all of us.
Yeah.
And honestly speaking, I don't know what you guys think. Do you feel like both camps are trying to curate misinformation and propaganda, and then they also create information to counter that misinformation? So while you think about answering that, so yesterday
were those two questions or one?
That is one question.
That's one question.
Yes.
Okay.
Two questions, but we'll just one question. Yeah. So yesterday night there were claims that Davis Chirchir was abducted. That is so funny. And then now and then later there was this tweet by Davis Itumbi. He says,
what did he say in the tweet?
So he says he was kidnapped. Later he said he is okay, but when he says he was arrested and kidnapped at the Bomas of Kenya, but when you look at Davis Churchill's social media interactions and operations, he was active between that time where they were saying he was abducted. But also, when you look at posts on Facebook, they're using two images. This one, and they're using this one. But the claims are copy-pasted. All of them, they are copy-pasted. So they're saying good news, notorious. Sorry, but not from African Censored, but according to these tweets. But when you look at them, these claims are reused. But the images that are circulating online, they are placing him in Bomas. There are no reports on his social media accounts about his kidnap. Or anything. He doesn't give like an official statement. There are no reports on newsrooms about his abduction and all that. But also, nation media. Sorry, this is Cynthia. I think we have Cynthia back.
All right, have we got?
Okay, yes.
Okay. Cynthia's back. All right, great. Cynthia, can you hear us? Cynthia? Cynthia?
All right. Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you, and I hope you can hear me too.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. Tell us what's been going on.
I can hear you. I hope you can hear me too.
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Too.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Yes, so we're at Nakuru Boys High School, which has been the county tallying center for Nakuru County, and the governor-elect Susan Kihika has just left after being handed her certificate after garnering over 400,000 votes to clinch the We are at Nakuru High School, which has been the county tallying center for Nakuru County, and the Governor-elect Susan Kihika has just left the premises. She's actually meeting some of her supporters on the road, the Nakuru Solai Road, and I hope that you can be able to go there and see what's happening. But what it is, this day has been a day of victory for the women in Nakuru, and not just the women in Nakuru, but also the women in Kenya, because Nakuru County leadership now is in the hands of Susan Kihika, and then we have Tabitha Karanja as the senator and Liza Chelule as the women rep. We also have about 4 members of parliament who are women who have secured their victory. We have Charity Kadambi from Joro, we have Martha Wangari in Gilgil, we have Jane Kihara in Naivasha, and we also have Irene Joki in Bahati. So the women here are happy, Kenyans here are happy that finally people can embrace the leadership, women leadership. And now what is left to see is just to see what now the developments, and to see them even deliver on their election promises.
Chance to talk to her. I understand there's a bit of a delay, so my question might be a bit late in coming, but did you get a chance to speak
so
to her?
that's what has been happening here. Right now, what's happening now in town is that supporters of the UDA team, Susan Kihika, Tabitha Karanja, are now actually in song and dance in town. And I hope maybe we can be able to show you a glimpse of what is happening around Nakuru town. Remember, Nakuru County has been considered largely a UDA zone, and it's such a victory for the UDA team.
Cynthia Gishiri, great, thanks a lot. We will be following what's happening today and into tomorrow. I'm sure there's lots of celebrations happening there. What a milestone for the women of Kenya, and a great indicator about what can happen going forward. Great point that you've made at the end there, that it now moves on to delivery on the pledges that were made during the election, and indeed not just for the leadership of Nakuru, but the entire county, the entire county government leadership across the country, as well as the national leadership that is now being declared, various members of parliament elect, senators, etc. And of course, we're waiting for the big one, the declaration of the presidential result. We will get back to you, Cynthia, tomorrow as we continue our coverage here on Africa Uncensored with respect to this election and on this special edition of The Big Picture. We've had a great discussion about the scenarios that you should be thinking about going forward into this post-election period. Think from what could possibly happen, the timelines between now and the end of a Supreme Court petition, what happens when there's a runoff, what happens if a president-elect dies before he's sworn in. I mean, we don't want to contemplate it, but the law already anticipates it, right? And lots more in between. And I've had great guests here this evening, Linda Bonyo from Lawyers Hub, as well as Angela Lungati from Ushahidi, and of course Nyakirari holding it down there with the fact checks. Thank you very much for joining. Remember to follow our coverage here at Africa Uncensored. We've been providing as much as we can in-depth analytical coverage of the election, and we thank you for following us. Follow us on our live stream, and don't forget to subscribe while you're there. It really helps us be able to push our work. Thanks for now. Have a great evening, or whatever time it is, wherever you're watching us from. Have a great day ahead. Cheers. Oh gosh, I almost forgot the most important part of this show. Where? After that long diatribe. Now,
it's all right.
Yes. Angela, you know about this.
Yes.
But Linda doesn't. So Louis, who's been watching, has been doing a caricature of the both of you. So Angela, you get to be on our Wall of Fame round 2.
Oh my God.
But this is your first one.
And I started rocking this hair this year.
Looks good, huh?
Yeah.
Looks good in the caricature.
Like it's 2 months old, so I'm very glad. Thank you.
Yeah, well done. At least now, not point
I
in
do this?
time. Yes, turn utuonyeshe. Yeah.
Hey, mommy, I'm famous. Yeah, I really love it. This is so personal. Thank you.
Yeah, this is really nice. So, Angie, you get 2. And you get 1, so we'll send you a copy once we're done with the show.
This is really good.
Louis, once again, great work. I mean, this is really something nice.
And you know, they said something about politicians that when people take a picture of you, even if you look bad, you have to bite. I'm glad I don't have to bite, and 2, I like it.
Are you a politician? Are you calling yourself a politician?
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Thanks for having, thanks for making the time to join us this evening. We don't take your time and your comments for granted. And this is again where I will wind up. I'm winding up round 2. Yeah. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Great show, series of shows today. We shall see you tomorrow. Hopefully, either when the president-elect has been declared or we're about to. Either way, we're here for it. All right. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Bye.